Hey everyone, welcome to another video. Today we're going to talk about issue number 13 of Uncanny X-Men from the Ashes, written by Gail Simone and art by David Marquez. But before we dive into the story, I want to ask you a favor. If you enjoy this video, please leave a like and a comment to help the channel grow. So with that said, this issue of Uncanny X-Men opens with a narration in the past saying, "Welcome unknown reader, to the private diary of one Miss Henrietta Benjamin, a school teacher of modest dreams and of means more modest still. You may call me Henry, everyone does. Any other time, a trip of this nature would be a jolly diversion. An adventure, one might say. But I fear much is not the case on this occasion. Of course, there is nothing left for it. Duty is duty, and we all perform as needs must. So strange that everything I own fits into a single small traveling case. Goodbye South Chicago, my only home. A surprising catch in my throat as my landlord speaks with a gentle hand on my time here. I had thought she found me a nuisance entirely. Shall I ever see my drafty old room again? Shall I ever return to my home again at all? Who is to say? Duty is duty. I only know that what is to be done, must be done, and done with some measure of haste. I have never been more than 3 miles from this spot on the face of the earth. I am frightened, but am also aware of a most exquisite sensation inside. I take Mr. Yerk's Iron Marvel, courtesy of the Chicago Elevated Railways Collateral Trust. It rumbles like a colossus. A friendly porter spots me at the central station, where I transfer in my trepidation this obvious. Then again, I know I am right in my trepidation. Because Miss Henry was heading to Haven, Louisiana. Now when it comes to this flashback, I like how they show that mutant issues are similar to racial issues. But anyway, after the flashback wrapped up, we transition back to the current day with Gambit and Rogue lying in bed as Gambit's narration states, "She's cold, like always even on this hot night. She takes all the blankets like always, she's a proper rogue that one. Do you want to be happy? Do you want to be glad the sun rises every morning? Get yourself a southern girl who can cook in all the good ways. And make sure she stays plenty warm?" So as Gambit went to grab something from a closet, a voice entered his mind and called for him to come quickly. Now this caught Gambit off guard as he thought to himself that this couldn't be who he thought it was, because he recalls that they had a deal. And when Gambit opened the door, his narration continued to say, "This is the thing about what we do. Sometimes you meet an angel or a phoenix. And sometimes you get a dragon, before you even get your breakfast proper." For this dragon was Sidurang from issue number 1 of this series. And as Sidurang stood there, he said, "Excuse me, thief, but have you had a giant razor bill, a mystical one, here by the windows recently?" He would have been massive, and his voice had a Latvian tilt. I sense he arrived after sex between two near immortals. Now, this was a reference to the events of issue number 3 of Storm, when Storm went to meet with Dr. Doom. But anyway, Sidurang then went on to ask what did they all get up to in this house, and then asked if Gambit thought about bringing Agamotto's left eye. So with that said, Gambit prepared himself for battle and drew his cards and stated that their deal was for Sidurang to return after a year to get his trinket back. To which Sidurang replied by saying, "Yes, well, I'm about to offer to break that pack. I believe you'll thank me. Climb aboard." Now with this offer given, we then transition over to Ransom being woken up by Death Dream and the rest of his friends, because for some odd reason, Death Dream is feeling something calling to him. So as the team continues to follow Death Dream on the next page, we see them making their way into the forest, and as they walk, Ransom notices that there is ice on the ground, which is super odd for a place like Louisiana. But regardless of Ransom's observations, Death Dream just went on to ask, "Can't you all hear that? It's a highway of pain and it's calling to us, and they need to find it." So with Death Dream dead set on finding this quote-unquote highway, Ransom then went on to point out that there is a little rowboat with an outboard that's more comfortable and a pirogue that's quieter. And once on, Ransom then asked where to which Death Dream answered by saying he wasn't sure and Ransom should just follow the tears. And after a moment of traveling, Jitter and the team spotted something in the distance and asked what it was, to which Death Dream spoke again and said, "It has been our secret for 300 years, our flatlined finale. This is the smudge on the X-ray. This is our beacon, this is the Dark Artery." So as the team get closer to this mysterious structure in the middle of the water, we then see the owner of the home standing on the porch with his wife. And as they stood there, it was clear that they both knew something about the Dark Artery. Because the wife points out how they took the boat and how they were going to see the door. And when Alice asked if he could stop them, the owner just replied by saying, "They deserve to know, it's in their hands now, and may our Father bless and keep them." So with the kids stumbling upon something special, we transition back to Gambit on the back of Sidurang flying with great haste. And during their journey, the dragon asked if there was a problem. Now Gambit replied by saying, Well, I got hit pretty hard yesterday, and also I didn't dress appropriately, so I'm currently freezing. To that statement, the dragon replied by saying he understood, and appearances are important. And once he landed and Gambit dismounted, the dragon then went on to say, "Do you know I don't dislike you, you have simple wants, and you do not apologize, and in that we are alike. In fact, I came to warn you." But before the dragon could deliver its warning, Gambit interrupted it and asked where exactly they were, which the dragon answered by saying somewhere warmer, the savage land. And on the next page, we see two gigantic T-Rexes rushing both Gambit and the dragon. So with all that going down, we then transition back to the past with Miss Henry continuing her journey. And as she traveled, he journal narration stated, "I have it on only the finest authority that the waiting area for both the ladies and gentlemen is above reproach. Elegant and accommodating, breathtaking even. But I regret to say ours fell to an altogether shabbier standard, by deliberate intent, by design. We were given a few broken benches, a few more dirty chairs, and a smell of sweat, and worse, it is dispiriting." So as Henry sat, her narration continued to point out how a gentleman has several times made the signal, the midnight M. But as she sat there, she made sure not to acknowledge it out of fear that the man could be with an organization called the Service. Now, during this time, people called people like her abhorrents, moonflyers, and Johnny Devils, but she preferred the nomenclature they gave themselves, which is the term mutants. Following that, Henry went on to point out that she is a mutant like her mother before her, who just so happened to die alone. Now it was always Henry's mother's wish to be interred with mutantkind at the Artery in Louisiana, the same place the kids are currently at. Speaking of the Artery, Death Dream went on to say, "So dark you can smell it, like a morgue and not one of the fun ones." But anyway, once everyone was off the boat, Calico points out how this structure looks like it is made of obsidian and how it shouldn't be within 100 miles of this swamp. With that observation made, Death Dream then commented and said, "They brought it here, can you not feel it? They're watching us right now with dead eyes." And as Jitter pointed out that he is scaring Calico, Death Dream just continued to say, "Oh no, don't be frightened, show no fear. That would be very, very bad." With that warning said, Ransom asked where exactly his Death Dream was taking them, to which he replied by saying he wasn't sure. But wherever they were going, Ember, Calico's horse, refused to enter. And as they descended the stairs, they found that all the torches were already lit. But the crazy part about this situation was Death Dream pointed out that they were lit for the last 300 years. And once they got to the bottom of the stairs, Ransom noticed that they were surrounded by coffins with an old book in the middle. And at that point, Ransom was positive they were in a graveyard. So with this revelation, we then jump back over to Gambit swinging for his life, fighting dinosaurs. And as he fought, Gambit narrated a story about his past, and during his narration, he brought up how every mutant had a hard time growing up. And it didn't matter if they grew up in the slums or a mansion with all kinds of fancy things. And when it came to his upbringing, he just never talks about it, because when he was born, the nurse cried out when she saw his eyes, and to this day, kids still sometimes run or even scream when they see him. But see, Gambit isn't one to show his pain, so he doesn't let on how much it actually affects him. But just because he has pain, he also understands that without his mutant ability, he'll probably never be anything, and spent his whole life working for the VIG. And he would have never met the friends he has currently, which included Kurt, Logan, Jubilee, Scott, Jean, and his heart rogue. So with that said, Gambit took hold of his cards and ran up the ice, and with acrobatic skills, he maneuvered through the air and let his ability shine as he let it loose. And as expected, the dinosaur stood no chance as it collapsed to the ground. Because with Gambit's mutant power, he is whole, he is himself, he is Remy LeBeau. Following Gambit's victory, the dragon went on to consume the dinosaur as he informed Gambit that the eye comes with its own side effects. He states, "It's the eye, the left eye of power. It will give you power, and you will crave it in the night. But it will give you hungers that cannot be satiated without pain, for you will crave flesh. It will be live animals at first, then it will evolve into friends, family, and even wives. I should have told you, in fairness, but your friends did blind me at the pyramid. You're decent enough, so I'll offer you a one-time offer. Do I take the eye back, or do you start feeling peckish?" Now with this shocking discovery, we then jump back to the past with Henry finally exiting the train. And the first person she runs into is a man who works for the service by the name Jack and Miller. And during their interaction, he points out to Henry that on board the train, he witnessed a man flashing the midnight M at her, or his words, a hex. And then Jacob went on to ask if she had spoken to him or knew him. And as she denied it, Jacob took it upon himself to snatch her back and dump everything out upon the ground in hopes of finding something to implicate her as a mutant. But to his dismay, no such item showed up, so in frustration, he continued to walk away and ordered his friend to have someone follow her, because he was positive, if she wasn't a mutant, then she would know one. Now following that, we then see a small peek of Henry's power as she reads a small secret sign saying beware, the man is watching. So with that terrible welcome out of the way, we then jump back to the artery in the present day, and once there, Death Dream states, we have to go farther down, and do not fear because they are near to the Guardian. So with that warning given, Calico freaks out and Ransom tells her it is okay to turn back if she is scared, because even if she does, she is still a member of their team. But just as she was about to turn and leave, Ransom asked why Death Dream kept saying do not fear. And just as he said that, on the last page we see Man-Thing standing right behind him as he said, it is because whosoever knows fear burns at the touch of the Man-Thing. And with that said, this issue of Uncanny X-Men comes to an end. Now down in the comment section below let me know your thoughts about this issue and what predictions you could have moving forward. So with that established, I hope you enjoyed this video and please don't forget to leave a like and a comment if you want to see more videos like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.